Hello everyone, I am Stephanie and this is the Cozy Little Brown House. I am joining you today from my front porch because we're talking all about me as a reader today. And my front porch is one of my favorite places to read, and while we are still having beautiful weather here in Northeast Ohio, I need to enjoy it because once winter sets in, I'm going to be inside with my heated blanket for months on end. So today I've got my coffee, and we are talking all about 10 things that define me as a reader. And I guess we'll get started from there. First up, what do I like to read? I read most genres. My favorite genre is catch-all literary fiction. This is where I devote probably 75% of my time. I've also gotten super into thrillers over the past couple of years. I really like seasonal reading, like those colorful beachy reads in the summer months. I also really enjoy spooky books at Halloween time, September, October, and at Christmas. I also really love festive reading. So Christmas cozy mysteries or the kind of books that feel like a Hallmark movie. I don't reread books. Very rarely will I reread something I've read in the past. There's been a few exceptions to this. There's about 5 books I've dipped into more than once over the past 15, 20 years or so. A few off the top of my head: To Kill a Mockingbird, The Poisonwood Bible, which is one of my favorite books, East of Eden, I've read more than once, by Steinbeck. The 13th Tale is a favorite. I love to pull out in the fall, winter time. But I have a massive TBR list, probably like many of you. And even after culling probably about 400 books from it, I'm still sitting around 900 books I want to read. And I just don't have time to reread books when there's so many new books that I want to get to. So rereading books does not happen for me. How many books do I have going at once? Multiple. I am not a one book reader. I usually have, I would say 3 is kind of like my magic number. I usually have a couple of print books going, and a Kindle book tends to be how I divide things up. I like audiobooks quite a bit. I've started listening to them a little more often now, but the problem for me is I am a huge fan of podcasts, and I am a dedicated subscriber to many of them. So if I've got my earbuds in, I am listening to a podcast like 90% of the time. So it's hard for me to divide up my time between podcasts and audiobooks when I love my podcasts so very much. But I do enjoy an audiobook when I get into one. So as I just mentioned, I don't do a lot of audiobooks. I still love a print book. I love walking into my library, choosing my books. I love sitting down and holding a book in my hands. But that said, I've also really come to appreciate my Kindle over the years. Prior to the pandemic starting, I work in the travel industry, and we travel quite a bit. So the Kindle makes it so easy for me to take multiple books with me on vacation, whereas traveling with lots of paperbacks or worse, hardcovers is just not doable. I also like the Kindle at nighttime because it has the light. So I divide my time up. But if I had to choose one format for reading, I would choose print books, and I like trade paperbacks. Those are my favorite. When do I read? Oh, that's an easy one now. I read almost exclusively in the morning to start my day. Like, I make my coffee, I sit on the porch, or I sit inside. I read a little bit before I start my workday, before our daughter gets up. We're also homeschooling this year. And I'll read right before bedtime. I am not one who picks up a book during the day. I just don't have the time. At lunch, I tend to put on like a YouTube video while I'm eating. So to start my day and to end my day is usually when I get my reading done. Weekends, definitely more time for that. So I have been known on a weekend to take a book up to bed with me midday. That's pretty fantastic, but that happens more in the fall and winter months. So, how many books do I read each year? I do not put a lot of stock in this number. I know that there's a lot of people that get very excited to set their Goodreads challenge for the year, try to beat their previous year's record. For me, this is not something I get hung up on so much. If I can read at least 50 books a year, I'm happy. My sweet spot is usually around 75 to 100. I've had years where I've read as many as 140. The last couple of years, my reading really slowed. I just didn't have the focus for books in 2020, 2021, and my numbers were definitely lower than average. I read maybe 35 or 40 books each of those years. But I don't get too hung up on this. I'm happy if I'm reading a good book. It doesn't matter how many per year. Eating and drinking while reading. I do not eat while I am reading. I prefer to have a cup of coffee. Like I mentioned, I'm usually reading in the morning. So coffee and a book, especially in the fall or winter, like that is just like the perfect way to start the day, in my opinion. Just amazing. But if I'm eating or like a meal or I'm snacking, I'm usually watching YouTube videos. I really like watching YouTube. So I am not one to sit and like munch on food while I am reading a book, whether it's Kindle or a print book. But coffee, always. My favorite places to read. I have, I would say three favorite places to read. Number one, on my front porch. That's absolutely number one. Number two is at the pool in the summer. We did something for the first time, and I don't know why we waited, but we purchased pool passes for our city pools. We have 2 pools in our city. And I spent so much time at the pool this summer, which was amazing. They have adult only hours, but even if it was family time, I still found it incredibly relaxing just to go spread out my towel, take something good to drink, and read a book by the pool while the kids played, or while my husband and daughter played in the water. So that was really, really nice this summer. And I have a certain couch in the house that I prefer to read at. And last, be in bed. I read in bed quite a bit before bedtime. Or, as I mentioned, sometimes on the weekend, like midday, with a heated blanket when the weather's really bad. So, some of the authors I love. So, I tend to dabble and read anything that kind of strikes me as interesting. But there's definitely a few authors, when I find out they have a new book coming out, I get really excited. A few of those would be Sarah Addison Allen, who I really love the magical elements to her novels. I really love Taylor Jenkins Reid, Alan Brennert, Barbara Kingsolver is one of my favorites, Anne Hoffman, Isabel Allende. I just love like settling into just a beautifully written story that just sucks me in. And all of these authors do it in a different way, but so effectively. So those are some of my absolute favorites. Should we talk about reader confessions? Let me give you a couple reader confessions. So last thing about me, we'll do a couple reader confessions. So first, I don't buy books. I couldn't tell you the last time I purchased a book. I am a huge fan and user of our local libraries. Northeast Ohio, we have some incredible library systems. I have multiple library cards, even more through Libby for some systems throughout Ohio. And I just really utilize our library system. Another reason why I don't buy books is because we don't like having tons of stuff like sitting around the house that we're not actively using. And because I don't reread books, I don't like to put money or house space into having books. I know some of you are like, oh, books no books around. Like, I hear you. I watch booktubers with their beautiful shelves, and it's lovely and amazing. And I do love having books around. But for our house, like, our house is over 100 years old. We have like no storage as it is. So I just don't buy books. I check my books out of the library. I have a few favorites that I own. I think I own like 3 copies of The House of the Spirits. I did whittle those down very recently. But yeah, I just don't buy books. Another reader confession. Let's talk about DNFing. So, do not finish. Books I do not finish. I have 0 issues DNFing books. I used to be someone who, once I started a book, I read it even if I was not enjoying it at all. And then, I don't know, at some point I realized, like, this is insane. Why am I reading something I'm not enjoying when there's literally hundreds of thousands of books that I would be more interested in reading? So I've DNF'd. I usually try to give a book a couple of chapters, but if it's not hooking me, away it goes. But I've DNF'd books halfway through before, like, that just I wasn't into, or 3/4 of the way through. But usually I know pretty quickly if it's something I'm not going to enjoy or something I'm just not in the mood for. So yeah, DNFing books, I fully support DNFing books. All right, so that was 10 things about me as a reader. I would love to know in the comments if you identify with any of my reading bookworm-ish qualities. So let me know. Let me know if we kind of line up on anything. I'm also going to drop at the end of this video some of my all-time favorite 5-star reads. Instead of listing those here, I thought I would just throw some covers up and let you take a peek, so you can continue to get to know what I've loved, and see maybe if my reviews or my thoughts on books might align with yours. So thank you so much for joining me from the front porch on this beautiful summer day, and I'll catch you on the next video. Have a great day, friends. Bye-bye.